The Canon EOS 70D was released on July 2nd, 2013. Now, depending on when you're watching this, that was about 10 years ago, which means this camera is getting really old. But when it was first released, it was a really revolutionary camera. It came out with Canon's newly designed CMOS sensor and, best yet, dual pixel autofocus for the very first time in Canon's lineup. And if you know what that is, it is revolutionary. It is a really, really good continuous autofocus for video shooting. Now, it is still one of the best systems today for continuous autofocus during video shoots. When this camera came out, it was about $1,200 new. Now you can find it used for about anywhere from $220 to $400, which is a really good deal considering what you get in this package. But first I want to go over some drawbacks about getting a camera this old, and this camera in particular. So one of the drawbacks of this is that it is an older camera. So that means you can't buy it new anymore. You have to get it used. But it's not that big of a drawback, especially if you go to a place like eBay where they have a money back guarantee and you're gonna get what you paid for. Now, second thing is that there's no true in-camera 4K for the 70D. Now, every video I've ever done on a 70D and Canon T3i even, I upscale to 4K. For most cases, 4K in-camera really isn't all that important. The third thing is it doesn't really have high frame rates for shooting in like slow motion. I personally don't shoot very much slow-mo. If you use slow-mo all the time, just know that this only has up to 60 FPS in 1080p. Another thing is that it only has one SD card slot, but a lot of cameras, like under $1,000, are not gonna have that anyway. Not a huge deal, but another thing to consider. Now, last two things is that, one, it's a DSLR, so it is gonna be a little heavier than your modern day mirrorless cameras. But for video, I would claim that to actually be a plus, because you're gonna have a little bit steadier video if you're, say, using a Steadicam or shooting handheld. It is better to have a heavier camera for that sort of thing. But for photography, it's definitely better to have a lightweight camera that you can shoot around very, very easily and quickly, especially for a long day like a wedding or something like that. Now, the otC thing is that it's an APS-C size sensor, which for video, I don't think it makes that big of a difference, but for photography, it is a decent size difference. You're gonna get a little bit less depth of field for the same kind of shots, a little bit of a crop in there versus a full frame sensor. Now, some positives. For photography and videography, it has really good image quality overall. It just looks really good. And that is probably one of the most important things you want to look for in a camera body, is that the image just looks good. It's Canon's colors. I mean, it's a really good image. It has a 20.2 megapixel sensor, so you're not going to be shooting photos for billboards or anything like that, but it is plenty good enough for even doing print quality images and video that you can upscale to 4K. Now, for photography specifically, you want to consider that the lens library is incredible and nearly infinite. Now, Canon is focusing more on their RF series line now, which is their big mirrorless bodies, but there are nearly infinite EF and EFS lenses. Now, you got to be careful though. If you're going to upgrade your body to a full frame in the future, make sure to only get EF lenses. Don't get EFS lenses, because they're not going to be compatible with a full frame body. Now, for videography, you got to consider the dual pixel autofocus. It is wonderful. If you need autofocus for video, then this is a great buy for this price range. Another thing is that you can build out your camera rig with this cheaper camera and then upgrade your body later. That's a great route to go while you're learning. So you can buy a gimbal or some sort of Steadicam stabilizer. You can buy an on-camera mic, a monitor, all these different things, and then swap out the body later once you have the money, and then you have a really, really good setup. And you have a really good setup even with just the 70D, honestly. Overall, if you're in the market for a cheap starting camera, photography or videography, I highly recommend the Canon 70D. Now, there are other options out there that are probably just as good, but this is one that I've had personal experience with, and I can highly recommend because of that. So thanks for watching. Really appreciate it, and I hope you have a great day. Goodbye.